Welcome to the God Project, and this reading is entitled God is Angry at America by William J. Eisenman, D.D. Because of his obedience, God made certain promises to Abraham. Genesis 12:1, Genesis 13:14 through 15, and Genesis 17, Deuteronomy 30, verses 3 through 5, Ezekiel 20, verses 33 through 37, and 42 through 44. The first promise was one of national and universal redemption, while the other promised many descendants and the Davidic covenant. Genesis 12, 2 and 13, 16 and Genesis 17, verses 2 through 6, Samuel 7, verse 11 and 13, and 16, and Jeremiah 33, 20 through 21, and Jeremiah 31, 35 through 37. Abraham was to be the father of many nations, and his name was changed from Abram to Abraham. God promised the land of Palestine to Israel forever. Genesis 17, verses 8 through 9, and Genesis 22, verses 16 through 18. And of course, Israel, well, we'll read about that later. But in order to find out why God is angry at America, we must know who America's ancestors are, and are they mentioned in the Bible. In order to do this, we must keep in mind that the promises made to Abraham were passed on to Abraham's son Isaac, and then to Jacob, and the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. Genesis 48, 13, and Genesis 49, 1 and verse 22. Verse 1 and verse 22. We must also be familiar with the history of ancient Israel after being conquered and taken into captivity by Assyria, who are the ancestors of the modern-day Germany. Israel was conquered in 721 through 718 BC, and the Jewish nation was conquered in 604 through 585 BC. Israel and the Jews were, of course, separate nations. Israel's capital was in the north at Samaria, and the Jewish capital was at Jerusalem. God changed Jacob's name to Israel, and the promise was that a nation and a company of nations was to come out of him. Genesis 35, verse 11. At this point, the birthright promise was with Jacob, because Esau, though he was the eldest, sold it to him. Eventually, the birthright promise was passed to Joseph, and the scepter promise, the Davidic covenant, was with the Jews. 1 Chronicles 5, verse 2. Joseph adopted Ephraim and Manasseh and said, "Let my name, Israel, be named on them." Genesis 48, verse 16. They were to be called the house of Israel. The descendants of Ephraim and Manasseh were prophesied to be separate. Isaiah 49, verse 20. Ephraim held the birthright and was to become a commonwealth of nations, while Manasseh was to become the greatest single nation on the earth. Israel's descendants grew to be about 2 or 3 million people while they were slaves in Egypt. Exodus 1, verses 16 through 14. After following Moses to Mount Sinai, God married the nation of Israel, made it his own. Their government was theocratic, with spiritual and religious laws that were given to them directly from God. Their king was God, and he ruled them with judges. Israel once consisted of 12 tribes. After Solomon's death and the making of his sons Rehoboam king, 10 tribes rebelled and made Jeroboam their king. You find that in 1 Kings 12, verses 4 through 20. The tribes of Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam. The 12 tribes became 2 nations and set about to fight with each other. 1 Kings 12, 19 through 24. The term Jew is a nickname for Judah, and the first place it appears in the Bible is in 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 6. Israel was at war with the Jews. The 10 tribes of Israel that remained loyal to Jeroboam were not Jews. In the Bible, Israel is also called the house of Israel, Samaria, or Ephraim. Jews are Israelites, but all Israelites are not Jews. The 3 tribes at Jerusalem, ruled by King David, were called the house of Judah, and they consisted of tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and the priestly tribe Levi. 10 tribes, which were now another nation, were led by Ephraim and Manasseh. The birthright promise now resided in the nation of Israel, while the scepter promise resided with the Jews. 1 and 2 Kings and 1 and 2 Chronicles. It must be remembered we are now talking about 2 different nations. Israel had its capital in the north at Samaria, while the Jews had their capital in the south at Jerusalem. Jeroboam was king of Israel, which consisted of the 10 tribes. 1 Kings chapter 12, 28 through 33. He was from the tribe of Ephraim, and he introduced idolatry into Israel, along with Sabbath breaking, Ezekiel 20, verses 10 through 24. This was a national sin, which brought a curse on Israel. Through 19 kings, God pleaded with Israel to give up these evil ways. However, they did not. God removed them from his sight. He divorced them. 2 Kings chapter 17, verses 18 through 23, and 2 Kings chapter 5, 18, and 2 Kings chapter 18, verses 9 through 12. God allowed them to be conquered and become a captive nation. None was left but the Jews at Jerusalem. Israel was now lost to history. They became the lost 10 tribes of Israel. If Israel had obeyed God, followed his commandments, they would have enjoyed the promises that were given to Abraham. However, they didn't, and they were punished. That is, the unconditional promises were held off for 2,520 years. Their punishment began in 721 through 718 BC and lasted till around 1800 or 1803. Israel lost its identity, Sabbath keeping, and its name, Romans 11, verse 25. when they migrated from their captivity, they considered themselves Gentiles. Exodus 31, verses 12 through 17. The Sabbath was to have been a covenant sign between God and them. Isaiah 8, verses 7, Isaiah 8, verse 17, Isaiah chapter 28, verse 11, and Isaiah chapter 40, verse 27, and Isaiah chapter 62, verse 2, and Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 13, Hosea chapter 1, verses 8 through 10, and Jeremiah 2, verses 5 through 6. The house of Israel never returned to the land of Palestine with the Jews in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah. Only the Jews returned after 70 years of captivity under Nebuchadnezzar to rebuild the temple at Jerusalem. Ezra 2, verse 1, and Ezra 1, verse 5. The people in Jerusalem in the days of Jesus were Jews, while the lost 10 tribes spoke another language and went by another name. The modern-day descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel are enjoying the birthright promises that were passed down through Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim's descendants in our time has become a commonwealth of nations, while Manasseh's modern-day descendants have become the world's greatest single nation. America is mentioned in the Bible. Genesis 48, verse 16. Isaiah 49, verse 20. And God is angry at America. The end.
Hi, this is William Morrow. Are you one of those people who join a health club, and after they have your big, overpriced annual membership, you notice that you're on your own with little or no results even after all the promises? Then the website Personal Trainer is for you. Thank you very much, William H. Morrow III.
So you lost another argument with a conservative, right-wing Republican. He talked over you. He screamed and yelled. He brought out the Bible. He thumped it. He quoted scripture to you. You were lost because you came at him with facts. Nothing but facts. And you expected that would make you look good. That would make you win the argument, but it didn't. You know why you lost the argument? You know why you're going to lose your next argument? Because you don't read Censored. Censored, the 30-year-old newsletter that shows you how to defeat a conservative. Read Censored, and you'll have all the ammunition you need. Every time you get into an argument with a right-wing conservative, so-called Christian. Censored, that's all you need. Read it, and defeat a conservative.
Greetings, listeners. Let me speak to you for a moment about the foundation of our entire organization, Newsletters Censored. It was founded by our mentor, the Reverend Dr. William J. Eisenman, in 1977. It discusses the 5 taboos of American life: politics, religion, health, human sexuality, and child rearing. You won't find anything like this in the mainstream media and the press. It reveals the kind of truth that most people are afraid to hear. Can you handle it? We are living in the end times, so in order to defeat a conservative and save America, you need Newsletters Censored. Go to www.newslettercensored.com, click on the printable order form page, and with your gift to support this work, get your free annual subscription. This is James P. Madonna of Megalife 21, the hardest hitting internet talk radio station on the planet.